Well, hello and welcome to Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow. This is my podcast on finding our success in the gift of who we truly are. These are conversations I'd love to have with people who know what that looks and feels like, in the hopes that it inspires you and me too to find new ways to use our unique gifts to serve the world, make our dreams come true, and pursue our passions in the way that we were created to serve the world. Now, as I always say, I hope this gets deep because that's where we find the good stuff. But let's not get it twisted. This is about the fun of life, because if it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. So let's be brave, be free, be you together. Now, my guest today is very special to me. She is a dancer, a teacher, a choreography and dance education advocate whose mission is providing high-quality dance education opportunities to underserved populations at no cost. She is the founding instructor of California's Fontana Unified School District's A.B. Miller Dance Program, later establishing the A.B. Miller Conservatory of Dance, which has won numerous grants in support of its mission. She also leads professional development projects and workshops for other dance education teachers in her district. She's also been named a Teacher of the Year by the California League of Teachers and won a major grant for her work and program as the Carlston Family Foundation Teacher of the Year. She is a past president of the California Dance Education Association, a teacher leader for the California Arts Project, and works with Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for the National Dance Education Organization. She holds a bachelor's degree in kinesiology and Master of Arts in Dance Education. She's a proud wife and mother, and she is also my cousin. I am honored and pleased to welcome Nicole Robinson to the Fearless Authenticity Podcast. Hey, cousin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and just be able to share space with you, my cousin, but also just to talk about all the cool things that are going on in life and work and all of that. So thank you for having me.
I appreciate you. You are so full of wisdom, and that's part of the reason why I wanted you on here. And your work really does align with mine in a lot of really interesting ways, which we've discovered over the past few years working on some different projects. So that's been an honor. And I talked to your sister on the podcast, and she actually made me realize that the work that we're all doing is kind of what our family prepared us to do. And I'm like, wait a minute, the fearless authenticity didn't come from me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's a bummer, right?
I know, right?
You thought you had this brilliant idea, right?
But it's all about the legacies that, we come from and the legacies that we're carrying forward. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about, because you and I have talked about this many times. As a child of a passionate arts educator, I've shared with you how the work that my mother did, I see the same passion and commitment to providing free arts education and the impact that can have on students as younger humans, and turn them into such wonderful people that they were meant to be. I see that same passion in you that I saw growing up and did not appreciate when I was growing up. So that's where I want to start with you, the power of the arts at empowering students to become who they are, even if they never become practicing artists in a professional sense. How do you see the work you do in bringing out the best in your students? And what do you think the average person misses about the importance of having arts education in schools, especially public schools?
I think my response to that is twofold. I think because I work in a community that is primarily students of color, just the idea that my students get to experience this is unique, because often kids of color, especially when they're poor, they're not afforded the opportunities to play and be creative. There's no time for that, right? We got to find you jobs, get you into college. We're going to make sure our school's an AP school. There's all of this work, which I think then gives those students the idea that their purpose in life is to hustle and get things done. And I know that I have that in me as well. And what I was noticing is I became a dance educator is I noticed that when I would work with students in predominantly affluent or white areas, they had all of these opportunities to play and to be creative, and that parents provided space for you to go and take a cooking class. And like that was allowed, and nobody was forcing you to get to work, right? But my students, they're not afforded that opportunity. So I think first and foremost, it is allowing and giving my students the permission that you have time to play and be creative, that we're going to give that back to you. And then I think further, just in terms of arts education as a whole, and I give this analogy all the time, you have an iPhone, I have an Android. The phone does the same thing, right? They do the same thing. They make phone calls, send text messages, you can look at media, right? But the way that an iPhone functions aesthetically is different than an Android, right? And we have preferences. And that's all artistry, right? A Tesla and a Nissan Versa, they're cars, right? One's electric and one's gas based. But at the end of the day, four wheels, engine, but there's something different about those cars, the way that they're designed. And that design piece is what gets us. Why your glasses look one way and my glasses look another way. That's the artistry of the thing, the function of it. We could all just have the same glasses, right? And so I think that's where things get lost. And so then we want these adults to be these creative, innovative beings at work, but we never gave them an opportunity to play and create. But you're just supposed to come to work with that skill set. So I offer both of those things. And, let's stop asking kids things like, oh, you play the clarinet? Do you want to be a musician? And nobody ever asked me if I wanted to be a mathematician. I took math from kindergarten through college, and nobody said, oh, you're taking math. Do you want to be a mathematician? Let's just get rid of those things. And let's just say that we are interested in holistic learning and holistic engagement of adults and young people, right? And in doing that, arts and artistry are just part of that. So
I love that last piece of the analogy because it is so true, because every company wants an edge now from all of their employees, and part of that edge is being creative, is, as many corporate folks like to say, thinking outside of the box. You can't think outside of the box if you never have.
you have to practice. You have to practice doing that. So, and you have to practice having ideas and cultivating those ideas and throwing them out if they're not working for you. And so all of what I do here is just to allow students to formulate an idea, practice, tinker with it, change it, throw it out, take another new idea. That's really what the arts are about. And yeah, you're performing, and yeah, you're learning these technical skills. But at the end of the day, it really is about communicating, seeing the world through the lens of your art form. I see the world through the lens of dance, through movement, right? And then I respond accordingly, right? That the arts change my awareness. And so then therefore I relate to the world differently. And I just wish everybody would just get on board with that. It's not complicated.
But simple is not easy. That's the problem.
No,
That's the
no,
problem,
no,
is
absolutely.
sometimes difficult to wrap your head around it. And one of the things I think
Yeah.
that's also hard to wrap around your head around, especially when you're a young person, is becoming yourself, right? Aside from your identity as a member of your family, which is our primary identity as the children of our parents.
Right.
How do
Right.
you see arts education playing into that part of it? Because that goes beyond just our utility as and our expression as people who work and move through the world. That identity piece of it, that authenticity, like how do because I've had clients ask me, well, how do I even know what I've lost of who I am? How, because it's so easy for us to get caught up in the definitions of all the titles that we hold. And we sometimes confuse the things we want and the places we want to go with who we are and with the things that people call us.
It's funny that you bring that up. So this semester, I threw out my complete course of study as part of the national project that I'm working on, the Connected Arts Network. We are asking the teacher participants to engage with Dr. Goldie Muhammad's 5 pursuits. And in those 5 pursuits, she asks you to teach your class from the lens, your classes from the lens of identity, skills, criticality, and intellect, and joy. That everything that you teach, you offer it from that space. And so in that criticality and intellect, You are asking students to look at injustice as it relates to whatever the art form is, or teasing out what's happening in the world and how that is impacting what's happening in the art form. And a big piece of that is, in that identity piece, is seeing the folks who are responsible for whatever the art form is, right? But then allowing students to see themselves in the art form. And that's where you have to work a little bit harder, because often people aren't asked those questions of who are you? How do you see yourself? How do you think the world sees you? Right. So then you have this adult, when I ask you who you are, you go, I don't know. I'm Nicole. Right. But Nicole has many more layers than that. I am a heterosexual African American educator, mom, dancer. Like, there's all of these different identities, and all of those things play into who I am and how I respond. And so I think that it's important for educators to lean into that. When people go, well, I just teach music. No, you don't just teach music. You have this whole opportunity to allow students to see themselves and the world differently, right?
I love that on a few different levels. I even love the joy part of it, and that's included in the education piece, because I think we forget that even as, but probably more so as adults, right? We see our joy as coming from outside of ourselves, outside of our work, as something we pursue as a hobby, as opposed to integrating into our own lives. Um, but I never made the connection with, even though I have always pursued what I love and what brings me joy in my work and in everything, I don't know that I thought about it in terms of education either, though. And that the joy can
And
come from you.
right. And that learning, there's joy in learning. There's also finding the joy in the people that you're learning about, right? Like, where did they find their joy? How did they cultivate joy to produce I mean, there's just so many aspects of it, right? And again, taking me back to my original point, often our students of color aren't allowed to have joy, right? They're not allowed to engage in joy, because even in my own school, well, our test scores, and the kids don't know how to read, and they don't know how to write sentences. Like, we're showing up into meetings with all of this deficit conversation. So it's real hard for me to find joy when I'm looking at my students going, there's a lot of things wrong with you that I have to fix. Right. And that it's a little bit different. So then how do I, as a student, find joy when you're coming in to fix all the things that are wrong with me and tell me all the things that I don't know? Right. And I
Right.
think we carry that over into other areas as well. We come into work looking for all the things that are wrong, right? Instead of finding the joy in the space and place in the day that you're in, right?
Oh, Nicole, come on, girl. You preaching today, child. So let's talk about,
Trying hard.
yeah, let's talk about you and your journey to this place. How did dance and the arts bring out the best in you? How did it help you to find and to define who you are? You started as a cheerleader and a gymnast in high school, and unlike a lot of people, you didn't commit to dance until you were in college, which is later in life, for especially in the traditional dance world. And you even resisted it a bit. So talk about how that journey plays into where you are now, and
Yeah.
defining, because like literally I can't think of you without dance, and the fact that
Right.
that struggle happened for you is so foreign to me.
And it's funny because there are a whole group of people that, because and I want to use gymnasts as loosely. Cheerleading, gymnastics is a little bit different, but I mean, there are a whole group of people that prior to me working here, they only saw me as this like incredible cheerleader, and so then that shift, right? And that's how I identified myself, and reluctantly coming into this place of, I do have the skill set, and I do have this innate ability to teach. Like, I've always had that Atlas thing that we talk about our family. There's always this leadership thing that's happened. And for me, I don't know about you, it was being cultivated when I was a little kid. Like, I remember being out on the playground and there was something going on, and me telling other kids, you should not be doing that. You should be doing this. And then getting all the kids to do it. And then, as you get older, you realize, like, that's kind of powerful, that I can encourage people and motivate them to to get them to do something different. So, but I think, oddly enough, this job here at AB Miller is what teased all of that out. I arrived to this job reluctantly. I had finished at a university here in California and just thought I'm going to sub a little bit and then I'm going to explore dance a little bit more because I just had started pandering in it a little bit before I graduated. And so I thought that's just what I'm going to do. And I had in college waived some. I was a kinesiology or physical education major, and I had waived some of those sport classes because I didn't want to take them. And so I think I had to take like a track and field class, and I want to say it was like a team sports class. And I was like, I'm just not doing this. I had already taken softball and I'd taken basketball. I was like, I'm just not doing it. So I went to the chair of my department and I was like, hey, I just don't want to do this. Could you let me sub some of these dance classes for these? And he went along with it. Again, that power, right? Like he's like, yeah, Nikki, you can do it. Only person in the world that I ever let call me Nikki. He's like, you can do it. So I went in and took those classes. And he said, the only thing that I'm going to ask is that because you're a kinesiology major, that there has to be some component where you are lesson planning or teaching. And so the professor was like, yeah, you can teach a couple classes. She said 2. I said, okay, great. I'll teach the 2 classes. And after I taught the second class, she said, would you be willing to teach 2 more? And in my head, I was like, lady, this is your class. This is not my class. But I thought I will do it. And so after I graduated, thought I'd tool around, and one of my professors called me and said, hey, there's this job in Fontana that they're looking for someone who has a PE degree who can coach the cheerleaders and teach dance.
It was just handed to you on a platter.
Right. And at this time, Jeanne, I didn't even have a teaching credential. I had just graduated from college. I had taken what's called the CBEST here in California, which authorizes you to sub. I just took it like, well, let me just see what would happen. Like I wasn't taking it seriously. There was a job on the line. So I came up here and I looked in the dance classes, sat down with the principal, had a great conversation, went home, got a telephone call. Hey, we'd like you to come back for a more formal interview. And I'm like, what are these people doing? Came back for the more formal interview. And at that interview, I said, you do understand I don't have a credential yet. I don't have the CBEST. And they said, well, we'll wait because the position was open like right now, because it was November or October. And they said, well, we'll wait for your test results. We really want you. And I thought, well, I don't even know if I passed this test. So they waited. Test results came back. I passed the test. I called them. They said, can you start immediately? And that's what happened. And so I was at that point petrified because I had danced a bit and done cheerleading. I mean, I had a skill set, but I had never taught anything. So I fortunately had an incredible friend and mentor, Brenda Kincaid, who said, look, come hang out with me for 2 weeks. We're going to build a course of study. She's like, you can do this. And I was like, Brenda, I cannot. She says, you absolutely can do this. She's like, you've been doing this the entire time. You've been teaching almost all your life, cheerleading and dance clubs. She said, you can do this. And she just walked alongside me and just held my hand and encouraged me. And then a few years after that, she said, hey, do you want to go get a master's degree in dance? I was like, you have lost your everlasting mind. And again, just handheld and dragged me down to Cal State Long Beach. We're going to enter this program. We're going to do this. And it was in those moments of having someone walk alongside you and encourage you and say, you have the skill set to do this. You just don't see yourself this way. And offering this mirror of how she saw me and that you do have the skill set. I mean, she's no longer with us. I hope that I am making her proud every day. But, it's just, I did not see myself that way. And it took many years of working in this job and lots of training and learning before I would even like comfortably say, yeah, I'm a dancer, I'm a dance educator. And now I can't see myself any other way. Like that person that I told you about, I don't even know her anymore. But that is, and so that is the journey here. And then once I got here, realizing and understanding that there was a deep need for what I was doing. And I, over the years have many times tried to leave and go and do something else. But every single time, Jeanne, plans foiled. Even last year, like I thought, I'm out of here.
I remember that.
I'm done.
I remember that.
Plans foiled. And, again, at the beginning of this year, engaged in another opportunity, plans were foiled. But this last time, very clearly heard, instead of you asking why the door is closed and why it's not being opened, I want you to consider why it's still closed. What are you supposed to be doing in here? The door's closed because you need to stay here and do something, but you keep asking, why aren't you opening the door so I can go someplace else? And that was only about 4 weeks ago, right before we came back on break. And I thought, this job has given me so much joy. I need to figure out why, what am I looking for? And come back here with the gusto and the energy of this place has always fed me well, and the students have always fed me well. So come in and sit down and get fed. And that's what's been happening since we've came back from winter break. And it's just been so fun to teach. Coming back with this place of, I don't know why the door is closed, but I'm gonna keep looking around in here and finding something to do until the door gets open. And it may not ever open. I may spend the rest of my career here. And that's okay. Because it's good. It's fun. It's joyful, right? So yeah, I don't know if that fully answered your question.
Yes, and then some. Because it teases out a couple of things that I want to follow up on too. The power of mentorship, and not just mentorship, but this active, almost sponsorship and promotion from another human being who has walked where you've walked. How do you see that playing out, even as you do that? Because I know you've done that for some of your colleagues and some of your former students as well.
Right.
What role does that play in bringing out the best of who you are, the best work that you have, and becoming and serving in the way that you're meant to?
Yeah. And you know what? Now that we're talking this out, I have not really thought about this, but Brenda did exactly what I encourage school districts and other stakeholders to do. We always talk about we don't have enough people of color, whether it be Latin Americans or African Americans, as teachers. And what she did was that I did not think that I had the skill set. Further, I did not think that I had the capacity or the financial ability to move into teaching. So here's somebody saying, yes, you do, and this is how you do it. That mentoring that often happens in other communities that sometimes gets missed for some folks that are entering into education, and that's exactly what she did. And so, in turn, that has been my intentionality: is to, how do I walk alongside educators of color, because this is not their first thought. Right. Their first thought is, I need a job that's going to make me some money. Right. The education's not their first thought. And so, because it's not their first thought, how do you walk alongside somebody and encourage them? Right.
Yeah, and the idea that it's an imparting of knowledge that isn't possible to get anywhere else. And I think, and also, I mean, and you know what, Nika and I talked about this too, is, how we talk about pipelines and the fact that you say at this point, we don't have access to we have a dearth of these things, and this is representation isn't possible because we don't have it. Well, where do you get it from? And that's how it starts. It's like it has to go back, and that also, I think, is reflected in our own family too, when we think about how we have had people say, okay, yes, you can do this, and we're going to find somebody who, even if I can't help you do it, we will find somebody in the family who does that to help you move forward, because you do sometimes need that hand holding. But and this is one of the things that comes up a lot in my work, and I try to reconcile it for people, because it's something I take for granted that people understand. And it's something that people have actually criticized me for. When I talk about fearless authenticity, people think it's about individuality. And I'm like, no, 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 no. This is about all the pieces of the puzzle and how they fit together. And it's like, if you aren't doing your part in your way, then somebody else can't be their part in their way, and those puzzle pieces move together. So I see mentorship, the kind of mentorship you're talking about, it's beyond advice. It is building community, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I want to also just go back to what you were saying, this idea that fearless authenticity is individual. No, it's not. Like, I have to be able to come to the table and show up as who I am, all the pieces of my identity, and do that fearlessly, which often doesn't happen for people of color. Right. I was just talking with my class yesterday about code switching, right? And why we do it and how we do it. And then asking them, what kind of situations do you code switch in and why? Oh, well, I do it here because I know that this particular environment will not support me in this way. That's what it is, right? And then going back to what you were saying, and then to have someone walk alongside you, say, this is who you are, Nicole Robinson, and who you are is needed in education. And how do you show up in this space authentic to who you are and your skill set, but be vulnerable enough to say that I don't know everything that I need to know. And here I'm going to help you find help. I'm going to walk you through and help you find the things that you need, right? Who lets you show up to a job like that? Right? Because normally we have to pretend like we know all the things, right? And you can't show your hand that you're not clear. And I was, coming into that space, like, I don't know all the things, and these kids need more from me. Brenda, what do I do? Okay, honey, come on over here. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. You know what? I'm going to go get this master's degree, but I'm getting this master's degree with you because I know that you need this too, right? Oh, can't even, right?
Girl, I love that. And the thing and the problem is I think there are too few environments that have that as a possibility and as a construct because there just aren't enough places that have any kind of built-in safety to allow for that, especially for people of color, especially for women or female identifying people of color. It doesn't happen, and then the trick becomes, how do you create that space for people to do that? Because that's how change happens. I think that's how you create that possibility.
Absolutely, 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 absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me this, what would you say is your biggest challenge, setback, failure? Even, I don't know how you define those things, because I find that those moments are the ones that have momentum to push us forward. What have been the biggest of that category for you? What did you learn from them? Did the experience give you some sort of system to deal with those setbacks in a way that propels you forward?
I think if we're talking more specifically about this job per se, I think there was a situation during the pandemic where I faced some really intense like scrutiny from some folks that no longer are with our district that just didn't get what I was trying to do. Sorry, you have to deal with bells here.
Oh, that's
I would say that was one of those places where I was questioning, do I need to continue working here? Right. Or doing this job? Like, I'm doing way too much and this community doesn't respect that. So I would say that was one place. Last year I mentioned going for this new job and getting so close. And then they're like, oh, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to go with this other person. I would say that was probably another one of those places. And then I think just at the early on in my teaching career, when I finally realized, okay, I've arrived as a mover and a dancer, and now I'm getting all this noise back here, like, oh, you should be dancing professionally. Like, you're talented enough to do that. And you're wasting your time working with these kids. I would say that that was another place. But in each one of those situations, there was this learning in that where God sort of revealed, like, nah, boo, that's not for you. Like, you thought it was for you. And it took a little bit of time. You have to get through the frustration and the anger of all of those things. Like, that's not for you. That's not the place for you. Like, and when I'm talking about, like, remember I was at an Ailey concert and Chris and I had gone together, my husband and I had gone together. And I remember I cried all the way home and just and so this is from LA all the way to the Inland Empire. So this is an hour in the car. I'm just sobbing, like thinking about all this wasted opportunity, And like, and I remember Chris being like, okay, so what do you want to do? You want to sell the house? You want to, and I'm like, yes, this is what we should do. And I'm thinking like now at 51 years old, like how ridiculous is that? Right. But it took like setting everything down that summer, focusing in on myself. I went out to the American Dance Festival, and I remember taking class with a woman who I thought had everything that I wanted. We were sitting out in front of this big tree out in front of this dance space that they have there on Duke University. And I'm telling her all about how I'm wasting all of my years and talent with these children. And she looked at me and she says, okay, so she's like, do you know why I'm here at Duke, teaching this summer? I'm like, because you're an artist and you have all of these things to share. She's like, girl, I need to work. And she says, now let's talk about what you're doing here. She said, who paid for you to come? She said, you got a job. You had a check come in every month. She says, you have benefits. She says, you need to go back to that job. And she's like, and you need to find some gratitude. And I mean, we had only danced together. Like she was not my girl. But in that moment, God was like, I need somebody to come talk some truth. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like this is a blessing. I get to dance on my terms. And, came back and, was dancing with a small company. And I remember sitting in the green room, and folks, the other dancers I was dancing with were talking about how they had to take off from this job and, I can't afford these hours. And they were going on about what they had to do to have this time off to do the show. And I remember just sitting there quietly like, okay, I had a paycheck. I'm good. I took the day off. Like it's no big deal. And so I would say in those challenges and setbacks, it was stepping back from whatever the thing was. And instead of having that perpetual pity party about why me, why is this happening, to really pull back and become aware of the situation, right? Like what is really happening here? What do you have? And what are you lamenting about? And are those things that big of a deal right now? Do they overshadow all these other things that you can be completely grateful for? And I would say every time I do that, I'm like, no, it's not that bad. You're just in your feelings, Nicole. Let's move on, So.
And the thing that's interesting to me about that is how it's also not seeing the other side of what it is you think you want. We've talked about this in my own setbacks where I was like, it's either protection or preparation. And sometimes these things are keeping you from the thing that you absolutely don't want, that you don't know comes with that, whatever it is you're pursuing. It's like, I want this so bad, but you don't realize all the downsides of it that would be deal breakers if you had that experience. And then later you look back and go, oh, how is God protecting me? Okay, let me just go and shut up now.
Every single time. And in those, I would also offer, and in those huge challenges, what I've also found every single time is that something extraordinary is about to happen. And so now when I see that, I go, sit down, be quiet, wait, because every single time something extraordinary has happened, right? Like even I mentioned I was going through that challenge with some folks within my district who didn't get what I was doing. And I kid you not, I'm living in the extraordinary time, like $1,000 budgets. Anything that I ask for, if it's good for kids and they can see the through line, yes, you can have it. I mean, I just asked for a $2,500 contract for a community partner. There was no question. It was just, yes, absolutely. Show the through line. This is how it's going to benefit students. This is how it's going to benefit our community. And immediately, and that is not the life that I was living back in 2020, October of 2020.
I remember that. I remember that time too, because I mean, that was a whole thing. And look at how it's turned. Look at how it's turned. Right. Oh my God.
Absolutely. So I think that's the other part that I would offer someone. There's that bell again.
You can't say something. School bells never sounded like that. No, I hear it, but they never sounded like that when we were.
It's so lovely. It's so lovely,
like,
right?
Boop, 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 boop. Mine was like, rah, rah.
Right. we're trying to not like mess up the nervous system safety on kids. So
I
soften
love
it a
it.
little bit.
Man, Gen X
But
just
yeah,
got screwed in every way. But
we did. That's why we're all jittery and anxious. But yes, I would just say to anybody, if you're sitting in the middle of a challenge, you just got to lean in. And like you said, what am I supposed to be learning right now? What does this situation have to offer? And how can I just show up as my best self in whatever this is? And I know somebody's like, okay, well, you don't have what I have going. I'm sick. Just how can you be the best version of yourself, even in sickness, right? Like, how can you just show up in gratitude and joy? Because there's always somebody that's looking at your situation going, that's what I want, right? Whatever that story is where you put all your troubles on the table and you ask to go and pick up someone else's and you don't. You pick up the one that you have. That's what you know. And so just finding the gratitude and joy in those moments, even if it's little.
and there's also lessons in those trouble. Your troubles are not my lessons, right? All my lessons are sitting right there in that pile of troubles that I have. And so, yeah, asking for somebody else is just work that you probably don't even need to be doing.
Don't want that.
Let's talk about self-care, because one of the things I love about you is how committed you are to taking care of not only your family, but yourself. You have to take care of yourself because you are the instrument of your work.
Yeah.
And we have had conversations about how self-care changes as we reach middle age.
Hashtag menopause.
Child. So what do you do to take care of yourself and your gifts?
Well, that is a work in progress, because while leadership and advocacy are Atlas family superpowers, overworking is our kryptonite, right? And so that need to, I'm just going to stay here to clear my desk and all that. That's what I'm working through right now. And intentional practice again for 2024 is you have to leave the work at work. Like, this is the cutoff time. This is when you're done. And now for this year, I'm not going to do the scrolling all night long, right? And so I have 2 books on my nightstand. I'm going to read my 2 books, chit chat with my husband. So those are the mini self-care things, just those pauses, right? Making sure every morning that I get up and do devotional. Bigger things, traveling is my jam. And I know you know this. I spend most of the summer roaming around, living out of a suitcase. And so that is something that I get a lot of joy doing, is planning out trips and gathering with people and just like, how can we get together and be in a different place? So love to do that. And then, I'm doing this whole facial thing, every 3 months, the hydrofacial, just, just allowing space just to shut things down, right? Yeah, just in small things, engaging, interacting with other people. I've been doing this thing in the morning where I pick one person in the morning just to send a text to, just like, hey, how are you? Or if I'm thinking about them, or hey, I prayed about this thing, just sending that message. And that's been really fun to do, like to pick the person that I'm going to send the message to. And then that creates the synergy of either following up, or like this afternoon, one of the people that I texted was like, hey, do you have time for a phone date? I don't have time to go to dinner, but can we talk on the phone? And I don't know that would have happened had I not done that. So just little things to just separate or create a work-life balance, right? That's what I'm working on right now.
I
You're
love
now
it.
you and everyone that watches this is now my accountability partner, right?
Ma'am, that's the thing about putting stuff out there. It's like, I remember the very first time I did my little self-care Sunday video, I realized people were going to hold me to it. And I was just like, oops. But then because other people are watching, or because other people are commenting and it's helping, then you go, okay, well, you know what? That's the least I can do. If I can't do it for myself, I can at least do it for my accountability partners. And then it ends up being for yourself, which I love. But I love the intentionality of that and the importance of the little things, because like one of the things that I promised myself, one of the little things I promised myself, and this is so like a pampering thing and nothing else, but getting my nails done. Like it's
I do that
just,
too. Yeah.
Because I used to be really good at it, and then somehow I got inconsistent with it. But I left the nail shop when I got my nails done, and I felt like I won today. This is just a little thing. It's an hour out of my time for a mani-pedi, but I won today. I won. And
Absolutely. And it just makes you feel so much better. And now so much that that's like a thing. Like I couldn't have my nails done for a couple of days because my nail lady was sick. And I had someone go, "What's going on with you? You don't have any polish on." I was like, "Oh, well,
they knew you were
nail polish
slacking.
is
They were
good."
like, "We're looking forward to these things, ma'am." Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
so tell me this: what's the best advice that you've ever gotten and or given?
Man. Gosh,
Mm.
that's a tough question. Um, I would say recently something that I've been trying to do is tell the truth all the time. Um, and while somebody might go, "Yeah, that's easy to do," you would be surprised how like easy it is. Like if somebody says, "Oh, hey girl, would you like to go blah blah blah," and inside you really don't, but you're like, "Oh yeah, that sounds fun," and then you just sort of back away from the connecting to do the thing. But just to be like, "No, I don't think I want to do that," and just sitting in the discomfort of that is hard, right? So I would say recently, tell the truth all the time. And then I'm going to offer my husband offered something to me when I was feeling like a fraud or having imposter syndrome. And he was like, I was like, "Oh, I don't think I should be here." And he said to me, "Well, they let you in, didn't they?" He said, "So walk in like he's like, "So walk in like you got an invitation because you do." And I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, like he's so right about that. Like they let you in, you have an invitation, walk in like you've been invited." And so and that's been something that I've often tried to do when I have those feelings of, "Oh, I'm not supposed to be in this room." They asked you to show up. So you walk in like you've been invited. And there's a different way, right? When you walk in when you've been invited someplace as opposed when you snuck in, right? And
Right.
when we live in that imposter syndrome, that's what we do. We act like we snuck in the room, right? And there's a different way that you show up when you know that you've been asked to come in.
That's 100% true. I 100,000% agree with
Yeah.
how we feel inside is what we communicate. In fact, I would say that is the majority of our communication. I think as a dancer, you would agree with me because it's about the body
Hmm.
language. But let's talk about this imposter syndrome, ma'am. I Woo! Let's talk about that. Because you know
Yeah.
what? I hear so many people talk about it, and I feel like sometimes imposter syndrome is what our fear is of what other people think. Like it's really not an internal experience. Like we experience it internally, but I don't know, something about the way it manifests. I feel like it's a fear of external things and it's not internally generated. Like there's some coded thing that happens outside of us that does it. How do you see imposter syndrome and how have you, because it sounds like this is something that has come up, which is so be like what I know of you. It's so like, why would you ever feel like an imposter? Because you could tell them what to do better than what they're doing now. And it's interesting how we all see each other different ways, like we family. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Right. I think as people listen to go, "I gotta bring up race all the time." But I do
oh,
think
please
that
bring it up.
but I do think imposter syndrome presses a little bit more heavily on people of color, particularly in academic settings and also in professional settings, right? Because we are still coming from, those respectability politics where you have to show up in the room, be the best dressed. And I even do that now. Like, I got to make sure I'm dressed appropriately. And of course, you want to dress for the situation, but I'm always pushing it over the top because I don't want anybody to think that I'm not ready for whatever this is. And so I think that there's that lane of it. And then, like you said, the other lane of it is just not feeling like you know enough or have done enough to be in this space, right? And even now, sometimes when someone says something, I was on a call yesterday and someone mentioned, oh yeah, I was on this other call and your name came up and they were talking about this and the other. And inside I was like, still, but then having to remind myself, you're 28 years in education. You've done all of these things in terms of arts equity, particularly in dance education in California. Like you shouldn't be surprised that your name came up in this space and in this room, right? But just getting yourself out of that thinking that you haven't done enough and that you're not enough, right? I feel like that's the thing.
Yeah. And, I think too, it just dawned on me too, dance is such a privileged, rarefied world, no matter what kind of dance it is, being able to dance in and of itself and have the education to dance is, and just the way that dance has been stratified and codified. It is codified not for us, except when you're talking about spaces like Ailey or, Dance Theater of Harlem or those bigger Black companies, Joel Hall here in Chicago, that were formed as, kind of as a space aside from the establishment of dance. I could, that actually makes a lot of sense.
And also because of the function of Western or American dance, right? Because everybody's been dancing. Dance belongs to everyone. Everyone all around the world dances, but here in the United States, it is a very specific art form that was originally designed for a very specific group of people. And often those people were not people of color, that indigenous people and cultural dance forms are not considered technical practices. We're coming out of that, right? So then when you're engaging in an environment that offers that, right? And you're showing up and you love social dance or you love house dancing and somebody's telling you, oh, that's not dance. This thing over here is, that imposter syndrome starts to build up very quickly, right? And then you come in like I did as when I first started teaching, offering my little students of color exactly this whitewashed form of dance that I received because that's the right way to teach dance.
Exactly. And we get indoctrinated to that, as somebody who grew up dancing, it's like oh, that's not really dance. That's just for fun or what have you. Oh, that's just what we do, oh, you weren't really trained and da, 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 da. And you have to break that. You have to break out of that kind of brainwashing because it's not in alignment with who you truly are and where you truly come from and what you have the capacity to create. So my last couple of questions, my dear.
Sure.
So this one's a two-parter. What is your proudest achievement thus far, and what do you still dream of doing?
Well, I would say my little family.
Yes.
My little family. My husband, Chris, and my daughter, Maya, um, I, I'm very proud of the thing that we got going on because it is completely different from the environment that I grew up in. And the intentional practice that we are still working on, because it's not perfect, of how we communicate and how we get angry with each other and how we reconcile and all of those things. I think I am the most proud of that because, like I said, it is so different from what I grew up with and the dysfunction that I grew up in. And so there's just this peace in my house where you just walk in and you just know that there's goodness and light and joy. And that's not to say that we don't have disagreements. We just had one yesterday, right? But then like this morning, everybody's good, like my daughter said to me, I was like, oh, Maya, hey, I'm going to see you later. She goes, you didn't say goodnight to me last night because we had a little thing before we went to bed. She goes, you didn't say goodnight to me. And so I, leaned into the bathroom door because she was inside the bathroom door closed. I said, good night, Maya. She goes, Mom. And she started laughing and it was just done. Right. And there's no grudges being carried. So I think that is personally, that is something that I'm proud of. Also, just the relationships that I have with friends and with family members is very different. And just really proud that I have you, my sister, just this close group of just strong, thoughtful, caring women And then professionally, I think I have to say the work that I've done here in Fontana, um, yeah, it's just
I love all of that.
it's super dope. I would, for lack of academic words,
Ma'am,
it is it is
dope
super
is
dope what has happened
uh,
here.
it is 100% valid. And I will say
Yeah,
this, and this
yeah,
is something that I actually talked to Nika about in our episode, was how I admire how intentional both of you are about your relationship with each other, with your relationship with other family members, how, in each in your own way build it. Because I think, that is baked into how
yeah.
Nika does her genealogy, but
Mhm.
also how you raise your children, how Gen Xers were raised in general
Yeah.
across the board is very
You're
different.
home alone with your key around your neck, right?
Girl, that string. Everybody had that piece of string, I think. But it's,
God.
and the way that you guys use what you do professionally in and turn it into a personal practice, I think, because your relationship with Maya is just, and all the changes that we go through as young people and what they have to face now, and the fact that, you being a teacher of that same age group now, right, that you're raising in the house, and how that translates. Like, I watch that and I'm in absolute awe, of how you guys do that. And you wonder, when you've done it one way, or it was done one way with you, whether or not you're going to be
What
able
it's
to
gonna
do it.
do it a
Ugh.
different way, right? Like, are you going to be able to offer something different that is a bit more sustainable and a little bit better emotionally, right, for people? And that's not to say that our parents did a bad job, but there was just something about the 70s where people weren't necessarily attached to caring or understanding how you were feeling about something, because this is just the way of the world, right? This
Right.
is what you have to do. And so, and we can shift. I know I have some friends that say, oh, these kids are soft. I don't necessarily think that these kids are soft. I'm actually impressed with the number of students that I've had come to me and say, this is not serving me well. I never had the ability or the agency to, even when I knew something was wrong, to be like, hey, I don't think this is right. Can we talk about this? And so, while some people think that these kids are soft, I appreciate the fact that they are able to say, I don't like the way this is making me feel.
Yeah.
Because how many things did you endure as a teenager that you did not like the way that they made you feel? And they were wrong. As you got older, you're like, this was absolutely wrong.
Sis, like, and here's the thing, the fact that they can identify it, right? Like, I think we all
Yeah.
have a lot of work to do in how we relate to each other, because there are gaps in how that happens. But overall, the fact that they have the emotional intelligence to identify it, like, we can do that now, but we're in our 50s. So that
Right.
that you
And
know
that's what's
and
and that's what's wrong with a lot of us. I'm going to say it. That is what is wrong with a lot of folks in our generation, is you were forced for decades to smush your feelings down. And so now you're having intimacy issues. Now you're not able to communicate with your kids the way that they want you to. And it's not, and there are some great things about our generation, right? We are the generation that straddles technology, right? We remember when there was nothing and then there was everything. There are so many cool things about it, but I think that one of the things that I am most impressed with my daughter's generation is their ability to speak up when something's not right.
they
Say it.
have a lot in common with us, as
Mhm.
the Zers have a lot in common with
Yeah.
the Xers.
Exers.
and
Yeah.
and yeah, and they do it a little bit better than we did. Okay, so I want to go back to the second part of that question that I asked.
Yes.
What do you still dream of doing?
All right. So here's the thing, so 51, trying to get out of this teaching thing, be like fully retired by, 58, 59. What do I still want to do? Um, I think it's more on the lane of mentorship. Like, how can I be the Brenda Kincaid for somebody else, the older, wiser, person who helps lead you, whether that's spiritually, emotionally, as a friend, like that, I think for me is the next place. Like, I don't need any more like accolades, awards, but I would just really like for there just to be this legacy of, she was with me, she walked alongside me, and mentored me, whether that be professionally or just as a friend. I think that that is something that I would like to spend my later years doing. That I am friends with a woman right now who that is her intentional practice, and she is so good at it,
Ooh.
so good at it. And I think I'd like to be a Kathleen Streibel, right? And she
Okay.
does it in every aspect of her life with her grandchildren, her daughter, other younger women. Like it's everywhere. And I think I would like that.
I think you've already started. And you also have somebody who's going to walk you through it. Okay, my final question.
Yes.
When, Nicole Robinson, do you feel like you are at your best, truest, most authentic expression of you?
It's funny. I had a meeting today during one of my classes. So my intern took the class and then I came back for the next class. It was the same content. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to get involved. You can do the thing. And we're doing the slideshow presentation. And I could see her like, oh, Nicole, just come do it. Just come do it. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll come and do it. And I, went through the thing and what we were talking about. And she comes over to me and she's like, just this is your happy place. Like, this is when you're teaching, and it doesn't matter who I'm teaching, whether it's students, adults. I love the interaction and the synergy that happens when you are learning and growing and teaching with other people, right? And that's what I feel like the experience is in my class. I tell my students all the time, like, yeah, I'm technically the teacher on paper, but there are some days that you offer me things and you teach. So this is a collaboration. And I feel like I think I'm my best, most authentic self. Like, I'm not afraid to embarrass myself. I'm not afraid to make a mistake and to communicate that, hey, oh my gosh, I messed up again, everybody. It's all good in there. So I would say definitely in those teaching environments.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate you
Thank you.
sharing
This
with
was
me.
super fun. It was
I'm
super
glad you
fun.
enjoyed it. I know that
Yeah.
sometimes you are like, ooh, what? What do you want?
Nah, it's good. It's good. It's good. You've also served me well too, so I had no problem with reciprocating at all.
I do what I can for the team, girl. Man, I love talking to my cousins. Having another family guest on the podcast has been a gift for me. I hope it's been a gift for you as well. Here are some of the things I loved about our conversation. That last one, not afraid to embarrass herself, not afraid to make a mistake. I think sometimes we know that that's what we learn from, but we're afraid to do it because we want to save face. I know that's been the case for me. And what lessons do we miss out on or have to repeat later when we ignore the mistakes that we make in person or try not to make mistakes in person and embarrass ourselves. And in challenges, realizing that in every challenge, something extraordinary is about to happen, and the strength that it takes to be quiet, sit down, and wait to see what it is. A lot of times we want to rush through that challenge, get out of the discomfort of it. And speaking of discomfort, telling the truth all the time and being okay with being uncomfortable with having to do that, because sometimes you do have to say things that you know people aren't going to love. But I don't know about y'all, but I'd rather hear the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is between us. Imposter syndrome, I loved what Nicole had to say about that. When you initially think, ooh, I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I should be here. So many of us focus on where we belong or don't, but you were let in. You have an invitation. So walk in like that happened. And hell, I'll even say, even if you don't get the invitation, when you are there, that's where you're supposed to be. Um, I also love, and I express this in our conversation, the intentional practice of how she communicates with her family, the practice of knowing how to communicate, how to get angry with each other, and how to reconcile. I think those last two are places that we really stumble on. It's why we push things down and don't say what hurts us, because we're afraid someone will get angry. We're afraid we won't be able to reconcile, but we can do that. We can. It might not be easy, but we can do it. And then finally, and I think this is really about Nicole's reason for being and how it connects to like the larger picture. And I love this because this is what my mother used to preach all the time. We are always looking for creative, innovative solutions in our work, and we don't realize that some of the groundwork for that is how we learn to play and create, how we learn to take a different perspective on it. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about fearless authenticity. The idea that when we are true to ourselves, we can bring a different perspective and come at it, a problem, with a solution that other people might not come up with, because we have that different perspective. And one of the ways to develop that is by giving ourselves time to play, as children and as adults too. We all need that playtime. Absolutely love it. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for being family. Thank you for being such a bright light. And Nicole is also an arts education consultant, so please reach out to her for that and for all her brilliance. And I love you, my fearless authenticity listeners, for your attention and your support. I could not do this without you. I would love and appreciate if you would take some action with this episode wherever you get your podcast, whether that's rating it, reviewing it, leaving a comment, downloading, subscribing, and sharing. Those really make a difference in how this podcast gets out into the world, expanding our reach. I also want to thank my amazing podcast team, Lisa E., Vicky, Wayne, Jess. I appreciate your hard work every single week. I'd also be honored if you would join my community. Yeah, we're doing some cool things over there. Sign up for my newsletter. Fearlessauthenticity.com is where you find that. You can also follow me on social media at Ms. Jeanne Sparrow on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok, as well as at JM Sparrow on Instagram and Twitter. This has been Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again soon.